Tene ta tanda ta
So what Rinpoche said was, the first 6 verses of our text presented the ground, path, and fruition briefly. The text is now going to go over the same subject again, that is, the ground, path, and fruition, but in much more detail. I apologize for the repetitious nature of traditional Buddhist texts, but the reason for this is that the initial presentation is a brief summary or introduction, and the ensuing presentation is a detailed explanation. In coming to understand the ground, as well as in terms of the ground, path, and fruition generally, one is involved with the 3 aspects of practice, which are view, meditation, and conduct. Especially view is the view of the ground. As was said by the 3rd Jawon Karmapa, confidence in the view is the eradication of superimposition and denial with regard to the ground. Now, previously we saw that the ground is explained as the manner of being, the way things really are, and the manner of confusion or bewilderment, what bewilderment is. Through these things being revealed or established, the special certainty that is generated in one's mind when one comprehends these is the view. And the view is to be without the assertion that that which does not exist within the ground exists, which is superimposition, or the belief that that which does exist does not exist, which is denial. The presentation of the ground here makes up 12 stanzas, the first 4 of which use opposing analogies to show that craving or fixation must be given up. Now, in general, the type of craving that is presented here is that which can arise through the practice of meditation, where you have an experience and you begin to crave the continuation or repetition of that experience. The reason why such craving or attachment must be relinquished is that the purpose of meditation is to realize the nature of one's mind. Attachment to any form of temporary or conditioned experience inhibits or obstructs this realization, since one is attempting to realize that which is not temporary and not conditioned. Now, these 4 stanzas make use of various analogies to point this out. The analogy used in the first of these stanzas, which is verse 7, is the analogy of bees getting honey out of rocks, but then not being able to actually consume it themselves. It says, giving up genuine bliss, you take another path and put your hopes on conditioned bliss. Taking nectar in their mouth, bees come close, but not drinking, they are far from enjoyment. When bees absorb the nectar from flowers and so forth that they find in the rocks, they actually put this nectar into their mouths. So in a sense, they are very close to partaking of it or enjoying it. But they never actually do so. They lose it to others, and their initial collection of the nectar or the basis for the creation of honey is pointless. In the same way, when practicing meditation, we must realize the mind's nature. If we do not do so, and if we become attached to conditioned bliss, that is a temporary experience of bliss or intense well-being that is produced by various techniques or conditions, then this attachment to this temporary and conditioned state prevents us from actually enjoying or partaking of the true result of meditation practice. And in that sense, our meditation becomes like bees collecting honey, but never actually eating it. The situation of being bound by attachment to experience can arise through the pursuit of meditation in general, or in particular through the practice of the techniques of the path of method. In the path of method, through penetrating the channels and winds of one's body, one generates various experiences: physical bliss, states of enhanced cognitive and apparent clarity, and various other experiences such as non-conceptuality and so on. These experiences are supposed to arise on that path, but they are not the point of that path. The point of these experiences is that they themselves serve merely as methods leading to the recognition of the mind's nature, or of dharmata. The experiences themselves are not the point of meditation, and therefore becoming attached to them prevents them from leading to what they are supposed to lead to. So whenever experiences arise in meditation, experiences of bliss or well-being, of lucidity or clarity, and of non-conceptuality, it is important not to be attached to them. And the situation is fundamentally the same whether the experiences arise through the path of method or through the practice of tranquility and insight. As long as you become attached to these experiences in meditation, then you are like a bee that collects honey but never gets to consume it. If you are not attached to experiences in meditation, then you are like a bee that gets to actually eat the honey. So the first of the series of opposing analogies here is an instruction to relinquish attachment to experiences in meditation. The second analogy is about discarding attachment to what is to be taken up and to what is to be given up. The analogy used here is the analogy of a clever person or being and a foolish being. However, in this case, the foolish being is the positive analogy, and the clever being or person is the negative analogy. The first two lines say, "Having gone astray, these animals do not create suffering. On the basis of this human life, experts create suffering." Normally, we would think of animals as stupid, and experts, human beings with highly developed knowledge, as smart. But animals do not accumulate very much negative karma. Even predators, such as lions and tigers, kill to eat, and therefore they do not really accumulate much negative karma because of their motivation. And furthermore, during their whole lives, they don't kill as many beings as an expert will kill in one instant with a bomb. In one instant, a human expert can kill thousands of people, and thereby human intelligence is often used not for the good, but as a source of great disaster and the accumulation of negative karma. So the analogy here is that under certain circumstances, it's better to be dumb than smart. So the first two lines of the 8th verse give the analogy. The second two lines give that, or explain what the analogy refers to. On one hand, practitioners come to drink the nectar of space. On the other, experts stay very attached to objects. Experts here refers to the learned, those who are very learned in Dharma, and therefore are very skilled at the rigorous logical analysis of phenomena. Such persons can be referred to as Dharma experts. They correspond to the clever individuals in the previous analogy. And then those who correspond to the dumb or stupid animals in the previous analogy are yogins or practitioners, who, compared to the clever experts, appear somewhat dumb. Now, the experts use their intellects to rigorously analyze the nature of phenomena. The criticism of that here is not criticism of their analysis itself, it's just that they never get to the point of applying what is discovered through analysis in actual meditation practice. If the fruit of logical analysis of phenomena is not used in meditation practice to generate authentic experience of the mind's nature, then while a great deal of knowledge and information may be accumulated, it is useless. On the other hand, yogins or practitioners rest their minds in meditation and thereby drink the nectar of space. Drinking the nectar of space here means coming to realize the nature of the mind or dharmata. So yogins who are comparatively dumb achieve the ultimate result. The point here is simply that meditation is more important than clever analysis. It is not saying that the logical analysis of phenomena is bad, it's good. But if it's never applied in practical experience, it is wasted. It is for this reason that in Vajrayana practice, the view is established by means of direct valid cognition and not inferential valid cognition. These two types of valid cognition are two possible ways that the view can be generated, and therefore they are two possible bases for the path. Taking inferential valid cognition as the basis of the path, or using inferential valid cognition to ascertain the view, involves the use of rigorous logical analysis, such as was expounded by Arya Nagarjuna, in order to reveal emptiness as the abiding nature of all phenomena. In this way, one examines or analyzes phenomena, including apparently solid things, and proves, through logical reasoning, that they are empty. Now, this has really two aspects to it. One is the consideration or analysis of the imputed self of persons. The other is the consideration or analysis of the imputed self or existence of phenomena. In the first case, what one is analyzing is that which we normally think of as I, or oneself. And one looks to see what the characteristics of this imputed self are, and if there is anything in reality that possesses these characteristics. One looks to see if the self is seated in or identical to the body, and to see if it is seated in or identical to the mind. One discovers that none of these are the case, and that therefore the self of persons does not exist. With regard to examining the self or existence of phenomena, one, through logical analysis, shows that all phenomena can be broken down endlessly into components. Therefore, that even the coarsest and most apparently solid phenomena are merely aggregates, and therefore have no true existence. Now, through this type of analysis, one generates a great certainty, conceptual certainty, about emptiness being the nature of things. The other way to establish the view, which is characteristic of Vajrayana, is called taking direct valid cognition as the path. And in this approach, one does not primarily consider external phenomena or external objects. One looks directly at one's own mind. Furthermore, not only is the object of consideration different, but the manner is different as well. When looking at the mind or looking for the mind, you do not look for it with reasoning. You do not attempt to prove that the mind must be one thing or many things and so on through logical analysis. You look at it directly to directly observe its characteristics. In order to understand how these approaches are actually implemented by Vajrayana practitioners, we need to consider the fact that Dharma training or Dharma practice in the broadest sense involves three phases, which are hearing, contemplation or thinking, and meditation. When undergoing the first two stages of training, hearing and thinking or contemplation, we do not employ direct valid cognition, we employ inferential valid cognition, which is the rigorous application of logical analysis which produces a decisive or definitive certainty about the nature of phenomena. One comes to be absolutely certain that absolute truth is like this and so forth. But then, when we begin to practice meditation, we do not employ inferential valid cognition, but direct valid cognition. Inferential valid cognition is very effective in producing a decisive or definitive conceptual certainty. But it is very hard to apply the certainty which is gained through inference in direct experience. It takes a very, very long time to gradually refine it through the practice of meditation and develop the clear appearance of actual wisdom. It was for that reason that in one context the Buddha said it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons of gathering the accumulations to achieve Buddhahood. So therefore, we do not use inference in the practice of meditation, we use direct valid cognition. So therefore, the establishment of the view in Vajrayana, as in, for example, the Mahamudra, is called the direct view, or the view of direct experience, which here refers to direct valid cognition. It is gained not through inference or reasoning, but through direct observation of the mind, so that one knows in oneself how the mind is without having to infer it or deduce it. Now, Vajrayana path is said to lead to the state of great unity, the state of Vajradhara, in one lifetime and one body. This leads to the question, if the Buddha's statement that it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood is true, then the statement that one can achieve this same state in one lifetime and one body must be untrue. Or conversely, if the statement that one can achieve Buddhahood in one lifetime and one body is true, then the statement that it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood must be untrue. In fact, both are true. The reason why in one case it takes 3 periods of innumerable aeons to achieve Buddhahood is that the context in which that long period of time is necessary is a path that is based solely on inferential valid cognition. And it takes so long and involves so much gathering of the accumulations because of the difficulty of implementing inferential valid cognition in practical experience. The reason why in the other context one can achieve the same state of Buddhahood in one lifetime and one body is in that is the context of possessing the uncommon practical instructions, which are all based on taking direct experience and direct valid cognition as the basis of the path. Therefore, in the practice of Mahamudra, we establish the view through direct valid cognition. This is the tradition of the siddhas of Vajrayana. I therefore think it's excellent, it would be excellent if we followed it. Now here, in this 8th verse, the distinction between the proper use of hearing, contemplation, and meditation and being attached to the initial phase of hearing and contemplation is represented by, on the one hand, practitioners who get to drink the nectar of space, and on the other, experts who remain attached to objects. Now, this point being made here is very significant. The cultivation of the discernment, which arises through hearing and contemplation, is of great importance. But if we become attached to that and think of it as an end in itself, then it becomes meaningless and useless, because its only function is to prepare us for direct experience in meditation. By itself, the discernment of hearing and contemplation cannot lead to Buddhahood. We indeed need to generate the discernment of hearing and contemplation. But having done so, we must not stop there. We must actually engage in the practice of meditation. So what Saraha is saying here is, do not waste the opportunity of this life in interminable analysis, but practice meditation so that you can drink the nectar of space. The seventh stanza was an instruction to relinquish attachment to meditation experience and to use meditation to recognize the mind's nature. The eighth, which we've just gone through, is an instruction to relinquish attachment to the discernment arising from hearing and contemplation, and to go further and actually practice meditation. The third stanza in this section of the text, which is the 9th verse of the text, is an instruction to relinquish attachment to pleasures of this life. And like the others, it uses an analogy. The analogy is, bugs among excrement are attached to its smell and think the pure fragrance of sandalwood foul. That's in meter. Bugs among excrement are attached to. The meaning of this, the point of the analogy in and of itself is that bugs who live in the midst of excrement think that that smell is really good. And if they smell something that we would normally regard as pleasant, like sandalwood, they're disgusted by it. In the same way, those of us who are attached to dense ignorance, which here refers to the attachment to pleasures of this life, which are the source of existence, when we're like that, we toss away the possibility of the transcendence of suffering. And in a sense, we become like bugs. Now, living in this world, we must deal with the mundane. We have no choice. The instruction here is not that you should try to avoid dealing with the mundane. It means do not limit yourself to the mundane. Do not be concerned with or obsessed with the mundane alone and exclude the Dharma from your life, because if you do so, then you end up wasting your life. The 10th verse is an instruction to abandon or relinquish attachment to extraordinary experiences or signs in meditation practice. When we practice meditation, we are working with our minds, and therefore we start to experience things both cognitively and in apparent appearances that we have not experienced before. We can therefore become particularly impressed by these. These include thoughts that arise that you've not had before, seeing or perceiving things that you take to be indications of some kind of attainment, various appearances, and even visions that you can experience. If you become attached to these things, they form a diversion from the pursuit of the genuine path, because you are attached to something that is conditioned and temporary. The text says, "The ignorant think an ox's hoofprint filled with water is the ocean, and look for gems therein. This water, however, will evaporate." Now, taking a transitory experience or vision to be a real attainment is like mistaking a hoofprint filled with water for the ocean. Not only is the hoofprint much smaller than the ocean, and therefore does not possess any of the things within the ocean that one might seek, such as jewels, but the hoofprint full of water is going to evaporate, and transitory experiences are going to dissolve or disappear, whereas the ocean is not. So in the same way, to invest in transitory experiences or apparent signs of attainment is a diversion. Therefore, it says, likewise, those who take their mini-experience to be enlightenment will not see the perfect qualities in developing the stable and perfect mind, because the mind clinging to mini-experiences as perfect will evaporate. We do experience all sorts of things when we practice meditation. You might see visions, you might hear extraordinary sounds, and you might experience cognitive states that are unprecedented. But none of these things are of any use whatsoever in themselves. The only purpose of practice is to recognize the nature of mind. And if you allow yourself to be diverted from that purpose or intention by being impressed with transitory experiences, then you are mistaking a hoofprint for the ocean. In that way, these 4 stanzas have presented warnings about 4 possible errors we might make in the establishment of the view, which is one's view of the ground. The next section of the text, can you hear me? The next section of the text will present 4 unopposing analogies, which are presentations of the correct, or descriptions of the correct establishment of the view of the ground. I'm going to stop here for this afternoon, and tomorrow morning we will go through the next set of 4. And if anyone would like to ask anything like a question, that would be fine.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yep.
It was a question about that first we hear, then we contemplate, and then we meditate. And what kind of meditation is it? If you meditate on emptiness, or is it a Shina meditation?
What was this? Is it a what?
What kind of meditation is it when you have analyzed a thing and you want to let go of it?
Uh-huh.
And then what do you do when you meditate there? Does it go by itself, go to where it should go, or do you put it somewhere? Or
You mean what do you do with the certainty that has arisen through the analysis?
yeah, if you have a thing that keeps on coming up and you think about it and you know that it doesn't belong, it doesn't have any reality.
Uh-huh.
And what kind of meditation do you do before it's liberated?
Before it's liberated, okay. The establishment through analysis of the unreality or lack of existence of the object of the persistent thought is the application of inferential valid cognition. This is helpful in that by gradually becoming certain of the object's unreality, you will be less likely to be fixated on it. But it is not of immediate benefit, and it is not sufficient to bring about the liberation of the thought of the thing. In order to do that, we need to apply the techniques of meditation which are based on direct valid cognition. Now, when a thought arises repeatedly, whether it is a thought of attachment to something or a thought of unpleasantness or dislike and so on, if you apply the approach of direct valid cognition, you do not consider the object of the thought, what the thought is about, nor do you attempt to analyze that object to determine its reality or unreality. You look at the thought itself. We tend to think that thoughts arise, and that having truly arisen, they are truly present. In this approach, however, by looking directly at the thought while it is present, seeing how it arises and how and where it abides, if it does, then the thought will dissolve. And this is of more help.
Rinpoche, would you speak about what the original source of this ignorance is, and how and why it arises?
Ignorance it can be understood in different ways. The literal meaning of the word is an absence or lack of knowledge, an absence or lack of clarity or lucidity. What it refers to is the absence of knowledge or recognition of the mind's nature. So, in that sense, we think of the mind as obscure or obscured, in that it does not have a lucid recognition of its own nature. Nevertheless, the defining characteristic of a mind is clarity or cognitive lucidity. So therefore, we have to say that our mind is, from one point of view, dull and obscured, and from another point of view, intensely lucid. The mind is lucid with regard to relative truth, and it is ignorant of absolute truth. Now, the reason for the arising of ignorance is that a mind has what we could call two characteristics. The nature of a mind is emptiness. But unlike space, the emptiness of a mind is not nothing or nothingness. Because the other characteristic of a mind, the defining characteristic of it, is cognitive lucidity. Now, the mind's emptiness and its cognitive lucidity are together or inseparable. And it is the cognitive lucidity of a mind that is the source of variegated appearances or experiences for that mind. The ignorance arises because of the intensity of the cognitive lucidity. The intensity of the cognitive lucidity is so much that it somehow conceals or some say outshines the emptiness. And the mind therefore fails to recognize or know its own emptiness. And that absence of recognition or knowledge in turn produces misrecognition or misapprehension. It's a little bit like watching television. When you look at a television, what you are seeing is designs, colors that are present on a screen. The vividness and clarity of these colors allows you to apprehend what they are supposed to represent. So when you watch a television program, you have no trouble identifying places, persons, animals, mountains, and so on that are depicted. In that identification of what you are seeing as what it depicts, there is a misapprehension. You are not seeing places, persons, animals, or mountains. You are looking at colors on the surface of a little box in a room. The bewilderment or misapprehension that is necessary in order to at all enjoy a television is similar to the bewilderment of ignorance, where the very vividness or intensity of the images, of the lucidity of the mind overpowers the mind.
I had a question about superimposition and denial. I'm not quite sure what I am supposed to think exists but does not really exist, and what I think doesn't exist really exists. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm supposed to think yet.
Superimposition or exaggeration is the apprehension or belief that something that does not exist does exist. And to give an example of that, in the context of inferential valid cognition, it would be, for example, the apprehension of all appearances as truly existent. They are not truly existent as they appear, they are empty, but to a bewildered cognition, they seem real. So that is an example of superimposition. Another, in the context of taking direct valid cognition as the path, is when looking at the mind, to mistake thoughts and emotions as real. That's an example of superimposition within the mind. The other mistake, which is the denigration or denial, where you take that which exists not to exist, is in the context of inference to lack certainty that emptiness is absolute truth, and in the context of direct experience to fail to recognize the mind's nature, for example, as the unity of emptiness and cognitive lucidity.
Tini, ta tanda, be some shena to sit also.
Time's up, we're going to stop.